So good morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Okay, so what are we supposed to do in this session?
So we want to continue on the succession planning with the HP case today.
Okay, we did talk
Maybe
about,
what
I
we
did give
focus
enough
on.
hint about SP case in the last class. Yeah. Okay, so what is the objective of this case? What is the concept that we are supposed to discuss? Kushali. Okay.
So we need to talk about the succession planning, about how Heard was, we see in the case that Heard was then accused and then resigned, and then there was this gap in the leadership where temporarily the CFO took over, but then there was then they had to find and plan for a CEO committee, hiring committee, and then go for an outsider. And year after year, even when Heard was came to the position, we saw that he was an external member. So we will be talking about that, how internal capabilities and how it has to be planned in advance, that who will succeed who and how consistency can be made thereof.
Okay, so the objective of the case is to understand succession planning and how it is important in ensuring that there is a continued value creation for the shareholders. So let us, already Kushali has given a brief introduction. So let us start the case with the poll, right? The question is that was the board of HP right in sacking Mark Hurd or asking him to resign? Please vote. Many have not voted. I want everybody to vote, unless you are not in the seat, of course. Okay, I end the polling. So this is the result. So it's a good sign, almost the classes split, 3/4 on one side and 1/4 on another side. So I would like to call those who said no, right? Those who raised no can speak now. Why do you say it is the board was wrong? Kavya.
So, according to me, I personally believe that sexual harassment allegations are out of a very serious thing, and it was not proved also. It should not interfere into one person's personal private life and then sack him just because of some unproved or false allegations.
Okay,
And
okay,
that too, the denomination was very less, $20,000.
right. Ria, what is your stand?
So I think that the board was justified because yes, I don't agree with the method that they use. That there I'm doubtful that whether they should have actually made the allegations public, since their investigation did reveal the allegations to be false. But the way Mr. Heard conducted himself, that cutting the side deal with Miss Fisher just before the board was supposed to meet her, or even compromising on his trust and integrity in the way that dinners or any kind of expenses for Miss Fisher was
they were put in his expense account. So essentially, all of those things just created a deficit of trust between the board and the CEO. And I think if that kind of a mutual distrust feeling is there, then I don't really think that they can operate efficiently.
Okay. Anybody from the other side, who said the board was not right, our board was wrong in sacking Mark Hurd? Nobody. I can see Archit.
So I
Archit,
marked
ma'am.
that the board was right in actually sacking Jacob.
Do you want to add any more points
So from what
over and above what Riaz said?
So from what I have read, the sacking was not because of the sexual harassment allegations. The sacking was because he failed to live up to the code of standards. So basically, he had forged some expense reports, and he had put up the woman as a face of HP in various meetings with important partners. But given her history, that was also a reason why the board of directors thought that it was wrong. And also, just before the discussions were supposed to happen with all the parties involved, he decided to have a personal settlement, giving some hush money. So all of these were not up to the code of standards for HP, and because of that, he was fired. So I think it was justified.
Okay. Yes, Kavya.
So regarding what Mr. Hurd has done, see, bringing the person in front of the important customers, then he might always say that the person is trying to have a new life, and how can he deny somebody a new life? So there is always chance for Mr. Hurd to escape his allegations. But the point is, yes, Mr. Hurd did something wrong, but was that so big that he has to be sacked?
Mm-hmm.
He did
Right.
something commendable for the company, and it was
Right.
just $20,000. He should be corrected. A disciplinary action must be moved, but sacking is a very big decision.
Okay. So that is the point, that most of those who oppose the decision would say that yes, nobody denies that Mark Hurd has done something which is wrong, but is the punishment really worth it? Right? Here is a guy who, by 2005, almost everybody has given up HP. HP was going down. The performance was going down. Carly Fiorina created a mess, and the company's fortunes were going down. And Mark Hurd comes and revives it, right? He successfully turned it around. And it is going in a particular path, and it is performing better than most of the competitors at this juncture. And whatever he did not create serious problem for the company. So at this juncture, is it really right to go to the extreme step of sacking him? Take action against him, right? But sacking him was uncalled for. You are putting the shareholder value creation process at risk, right? So what is important here? Is it the code of conduct? This is an example where the code of conduct actually comes against uh, the value creation process, right? So how would you respond? Those who said yes. Maitri Basa.
Sir, I believe that it was very important to set a strong precedence. Because if, I mean, at this point, we see that there was a dilution in shareholder value because of his sacking. But if it would have continued, we don't know if this precedent would have been followed by other people and they would have followed these actions. And then would have pleaded guilty and not received any punishment just because he didn't
But
receive.
nobody says no. Don't give punishment. Those who oppose this say that the punishment is disproportional to the mistake that he committed. Punishment need to be given.
Moral standards of the position require that he adhere to all the rules and regulations. And if any leniency is spared at this point, it might be very costly for the company's culture.
I don't see anybody who's supporting, I mean, who's opposing the board's decision is speaking except Kavya. So I myself will play that role. See, the board sacked Mark Hurd and gave a punishment. Yes, Chitran, please.
Yes, sir. So I was also on the same side. So the board did this decision abruptly. Like they didn't consider the cost benefit analysis. Like what will be the payoffs if he leaves the company, and where will the company go in that phase? Like leading a leadership, no, lacking a leadership if he leaves the company. They didn't also compensate him proportionately. That's why he could join Oracle later on, and they couldn't like resist that as well in an ethical way. So that's why like they left Hurd very cornered because of their decision, which they took abruptly without considering the shareholders' value. So he could have just paid that $20,000 fine and continued in the company. Meanwhile, they could have done this new leadership assessment or something, and brought anyone else, but they didn't do a proper thought
Good.
process for this whole thing to take place. So
Yes,
that's why I
Kushali.
think it is not.
Yes, Chitran. Thank you. Kushali.
So, sir, on Chitrang's point of the company was not being considerate, I would contest that by saying that company was being considerate by even setting up its own internal committee for an investigation, giving a chance of getting Fisher and Hurd both on the table and striking a negotiation. But Hurd took it personally and went on the sideline with the option of a hush money to shoo her away, or being non-transparent with his expenses which he has given. And also we see in later in the case that even employees have shown resistance towards the style of working that Hurd was Hurd was doing in terms of the salary cut, in terms of attrition, a lot of those points as well. So while one point very strong in his case is non-transparency and his involvement with Fisher and his actions beyond the board, the second point in a peripheral argument why he should have been sacked is also in terms of performance. The numbers might have seen good, but the internal company culture was getting deteriorated.
Okay, good. Tanay.
Yes, sir. So my point was also on the culture. So as rightly noted by Maitri as well, that if they would have just given a fine of $20,000 or maybe a bit more and let him off, it would kind of create a culture, as in they would the employees would feel that okay, I can get away with it very easily even if I do any such kind of a thing, although it may be the $20,000 or the sexual harassment, in all the aspects of it, people would think that we can get out of it very easily, and that is bad in the long run, even for the value creation and the shareholders as well. Because if that kind of thing continuously happens, then you would see more employees leaving, or the culture would be so bad that the value creation process would be hampered very significantly. So for the long run, even for the shareholders, the board did the right thing.
Okay. Archit.
Yes, sir. So I agree with what Kushali and Tanay have said, that setting a precedent was actually very important. They've covered most of the points. What I want to add is that Mark Hurd was actually dismissed with a very generous severance package. It's not like he was dismissed very randomly. So his interests were also taken care of. What he did for the company was also taken care of. It was right for the board to set a very ethical standard, given when such kind of allegations come to the fore. The value of the company can decrease very fast if the board does not take immediate action that sets a good precedent for the future. And so how they did it properly with Apotheker, that is a different question. They formed double standards, but at that moment it was justified.
Okay. Yeah, we will come to the appointment of Apotheker a bit later, right? Ria, go ahead, Ria.
So actually, I had to make the same point as Tanay. So that essentially the CEO has to espouse the values which the company believes in. And if he doesn't do that, then, the culture of the company will get deteriorated. And in the long run, it might lead to destruction of value creation. So, yeah.
Okay. Tanya.
Sir, I had similar point like Ria, that it was not about the financials, that we can take into consideration that it was a small amount, so it's a, but it was about the culture of the organization on which this could have a negative impact. So it was right to terminate him.
Okay. Pooja?
Sir, so I actually voted for no. So
Yeah, okay. So you have to counter everything.
Sir, okay. So, sir, I think as Kavya also mentioned that sacking is a too big thing, and somebody just coming and putting allegations, and that too the investigations did not happen the way it should have happened, sir. There should have been somewhat deep investigations and then proving that yes, he was, like he has done misconduct. So I think they kind of mixed up these things, that yes, because the investigation was about something else, but they found something else and then they sacked him. And honestly speaking, sir, I also don't feel that it is about the money, that whether it is $20,000 or whether it is $10,000. It is just about the right thing, that the right conduct that should have been followed. So as many have spoken, that the president should have set. So
you changed your mind now, is it?
no, sir, I'm not changing the mind. The president should have been set, people are saying, but I also feel the right president should have been set, sir.
Okay.
It is not about that just sacking people for each and every thing that they find is wrong could set a precedent.
Okay, so basically, in fact, on 5th, he was asked to come, and when he didn't come, they sacked him immediately. They didn't seek any formal explanation from him as to why did he do whatever he did. That is settling the issue, outside the company on his own. They didn't seek any explanation from him. The ego was their ego was at their play. We called for mediation, and this guy settled it without bringing it to our level. So we have to teach him a lesson, right? So that is the issue. So almost all of us agree that what he did is wrong, and that should not be allowed to continue. A president need to be set, a message need to be sent to the all the people in the company that such kind of behavior is not tolerated. But the question is whether the punishment was proportional to the mistake that he committed, right? Basically, there is no sexual harassment, which that the lady herself accepted. Okay, and there are also justifications, why this man put Fisher as the face of the company in some of the meetings. She was already a popular person. She appeared in Playboy magazines, and also she's a well-known figure. Why not put her as the face of the company? So it is not that putting her as a face. If he had put somebody else as the face of the company, won't that be questioned? Right? Probably not. But here, since he seemed to have a relationship with the person, it becomes an issue. Shivani.
Sir, what I personally feel is the sexual harassment complaint filed by Fisher was only a trigger to probe into the actions of Heard. And then later on, and this even the Heard also, even the Mark Heard also, when the complaint was filed, he told to the board members that this has been done to me, but later on he didn't tell the board members that he was going to approach Fisher and close the settlement with hush money, which is not a good sign. And also he's a face of the HP to the outsiders. And when people in the top management are not expected to do mistakes, because even a small mistake from their side is going to cause a big thing, and everybody knows that that is actually a bad sign to the company also. And moreover, it's not that he doesn't know about Fisher. He knows about Fisher and her past life also. And even after knowing all those, with his personal interest, he made her as a face to the events, and which is actually not good to the company. So all of the times he was considering his self-interest, at least in the Fisher's case.
Okay. So Kavya, how would you respond to the points raised by Shivani?
So Shivani, if you don't mind, can you just be can you just tell one by one.
No, I'll repeat. See, basically, one of the important point that she says is that at every level, Mark Hurd was putting his personal interest ahead of the company, right? What is the need for him to, put Fisher, this lady, in as the face of the company because he was expecting some favor from her, right? Probably a relationship, and the employees were also telling that he wanted to prove something for as his achievement, rather than taking care of the employees. So at every level, Mark was putting himself ahead of the company, and hence the board was right.
Okay, so I would perceive this as like this. See, Mark, the Fisher might be a beautiful woman, and Heard could have probably wanting a relationship with her, but uh, see, everything was done in the capacity of Heard as a CEO of the company. He gave her an opportunity as a she was an independent contractor, and she had and everything was legal. She can be appointed as a contractor. She was appointed as a contractor. There is nothing that could deny an actress with such a background that should not work for the company. Just
Right.
because there was allegation today, they're saying that how can Fisher be brought to such an occasion? If not, it was a very good move. She was giving a new life again. And
Right.
the other thing regarding the personal interest, like how can you prove that just because of 20,000 misappropriation of the money? His salary is much more than that. The point is there was a chance to exploit, and when a person exploits it, it is not 100% mistake of him that he exploited it. Because that was a chance to exploit was created by the law itself, the board. And now
Right.
board cannot get away saying that Mr. Hurd did the 100% mistake here.
Oh, good. Good. That's an interesting point. Yes, Mark did a mistake. Nobody is denying it, but is not board responsible for it, right? Where was the board? For the entire period, and suddenly, one fine morning, they are coming and putting the entire blame on Mark. How fair it is, right? And only Mark was sacked. Nothing happened to the board members, right? They, as if they projected themselves to be saints and made him as a scapegoat. So that's not right. If somebody has to be, if the people need to be punished for the mistake, the board members also are liable for punishment. So why is that they were allowed to escape? That's a valid question. Anybody want to respond before we move further?
Sir, excuse me,
Yes,
sir.
Kavya, you want to add anything?
Yes, sir. Also, I want to add one thing, sir. That is the sexual harassment allegations, even if it's a man or a woman, are extremely sensitive. And
Right.
it was at one point of states, yes, even today there are people who use it for their own advantages
Right.
because it can threaten a person's position itself. So when you're looking into one person's private life, you should be very careful. And
Correct.
regarding her going one before night and making for a settlement, what do you expect from any normal person?
Right.
Would be so stupid to leave his fate as a CEO in someone's hand in the mediation table? That is, as a human being, he did what he would have, which is expected from anybody.
Right.
We have to be
Right.
more sensitive while dealing with these things.
Okay. Okay. So, in anything, anybody else, this is sexual harassment is certainly a serious issue. Some action need to be taken, but here it is not proved, right? When it is not proved, and the other party is willing to settle it outside, what is the problem for the company and the board, right? That is one point. Yes, Kushali. This is not my point, but just one point. Yeah, Kushali, please.
Sir, I have a point to make and a question to ask from you.
Yeah.
So, regarding point of Kavya, where she was mentioning that it was as much a fault of the board as
Mhm.
as it was of Hurd, I would contest that by saying at such senior leadership positions, there is a lot of personal responsibility that comes with your stature, and I think that Heard should have had complied with, because it's not that board will just go on behind you investigating every now and then, and that's the duty of the board to instill trust in that position, which the board did with Heard, and I think
Right.
that was right on her on their part. But my question to you here is, while I am on the side that what the board did was right, I wanted to ask, since the board's action led to a steep fall in shareholders' value, do we consider shareholders' value in only in terms of the wealth created for the shareholder?
That's a good question. See, that leads us to the next stage. Thanks for taking us in the right direction. Yes, maybe we can consider that the action taken by the board may be disproportionate, but they send a right message to everybody. You know, this kind of behavior cannot be tolerated, and sometimes we may even take extreme step of sacking you, even if you are a CEO, if you are involved in these kind of issues, right? So to that extent, even if you take it as a right thing, where did the board fail is that they did not have, at any point in time, the succession planning calls for, succession planning processes calls for a replacement for the CEO, or not just for the CEO, but every senior member at the top of the company. There should be an identified replacement at any point in time, right? If this person goes for whatever reason, there has to be somebody else, right? So they never had anything. That is where the board failed, right? That is where in succession planning, see, here it is a sexual harassment case. The board sacked them. What if Mark Hurd died in a flight accident, right? What is the backup for the board? Board did not have anybody, and the case says that the CFO of the company, she was also not interested in carrying it forward, right? And so it means that whatever mistake that Thermax did, right, when Rohingya Naga died, Abhay Nalavade was completely not in a position to take over the mantle. So similar is the case here. The CFO was not ready, was not in a position to take over the mantle after the departure of Mark. That's where the board did a very big mistake, right? At any point in time, if the CEO goes for whatever reason, right, you need to have alternative or backup ready, right? That did not happen in the case of, if it looks very we need not look in as a negative thing, right? Anticipating somebody's death or departure. No, it is not like that. Here we are dealing with the wealth, or lifetime saving of thousands of shareholders, right? So you need to have a backup plan all the time, at least at the very top level. So that is where the board has failed in their succession planning. So I would say the mistake, when they do not have such a succession plan, and this man has made a mistake, you know, uh, they should have waited something. They should have, instead of abruptly sacking him, they could have put him on notice. They could have put him on notice, probably, one year or so, and then search for an alternative. They didn't do that also, right? So in between, they bring in a CFO, and the CFO was not interested in continuing. So all these things were the mistake of the board, and that led to the next mistake. So suddenly there is a vacuum created. The board didn't know what to do, and that there comes the next question. What is the next question? So the next question is, was the HP board right in making Apothekar and Ray Lane as the CEO and chairman respectively? Please vote. Partly right means, one appointment is right, another appointment is wrong. I'm going to close it. Please vote. I still have around 10 people not voting. Anyway, I'm ending the poll. Okay. So majority of them says that probably I should have launched another poll. Which appointment is right? Appointment of Ray Lane or Raymond Lane or Apothekar? Okay. So what was wrong in the appointment? Which appointment is wrong? Apothekar. First, let us say, how many of you say Apothekar appointment is wrong? Anybody want to express their opinion? Sriram.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I think the succession planning should have been done previously, like you mentioned, and I feel that they should have nurtured professionals from within the company rather than looking outside, because I
Correct.
believe that so like Ria mentioned previously, the people who are working for a long period of time would have espoused the values of the company, and apart
Correct.
from that, they would have gained a lot of corporate as well as technical knowledge, and they could also, they would have seen the growth of the company from inside, so they would know the problems firsthand. And then apart from that, so apart from that, I feel that having so they also appointed the CFO, but the CFO did not want to continue as the continue in the given position, so they should have had a succession plan in
internally
for a long term, where they primed executives who wanted to be part of the particular position.
Okay. Okay. Apurva.
Sir, when they appointed Apothekar, he already had a precedence of having some issues at SAP, where SAP's customers and employees had already shown dissatisfaction with his leadership. And the performance of SAP had declined during his leadership. So, what was the justification for taking him in as a CEO so abruptly was something which I was not very sure of. It seemed like there were a reasoning given that they were trying to grow in software, but still when there was dissatisfaction, why would they do so?
Okay. Okay. Ria.
Yes, sir. So apart from the points made by Apurva and Sriram, there was also the problem that Apothekar was, he was connected to the intellectual property theft lawsuit, which is also a serious problem when he was the CEO of SAP. So, you can't really take a moral high ground in one case by sacking Herd abruptly and then, appointing the CEO who has a dismal record.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Tanya.
So, sir, one of the points made against Herd was that he was cutting costs of the company, which led to reduced R&D, and which was against the welfare of the company. And now they have brought up Apothekar, who was also like famous for his cost-cutting procedures in SAP. So, wasn't it hypocrite to have this person with similar traits which were disliked by the company initially?
Okay. Okay. Archit.
So my points are actually covered. I was talking about the ethical standards, the double standard displayed by the board actually. When Mark Herd was dismissed, there were some ethics that were espoused which did not come into play when Apothekar was appointed.
Okay. 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 Nobody talked about bringing in Raymond. Who is he? Yeah, Raymond Lane. His full name is Raymond Lane. Ray Lane. Don't you find anything wrong with Ray Lane's appointment?
So there is very less data regarding that. So
and there is enough data to find fault with that if you really want. Where was he brought in from?
Oracle.
venture capitalist.
Oracle, I think so.
Right? And they brought him from Oracle. And is it not, a simple revenge, a childish revenge that Oracle took Mark Gerd, so we will retaliate by taking somebody, Oracle took Mark Gerd as a co-CEO, so we will take one of your person as our chairman. That is like a childish revenge that rather than looking into the credibility and credentials of this guy, they simply took him kind of a revenge. So as Archit rightly pointed out, they didn't have enough information as to why did they bring him in. But it is very clear that he was from Oracle, he was with Oracle, and he fell out with Laurie Ellison, and to send a message to Laurie Ellison that you took a guy who fell out with us, and we will take a guy who fell out with you, right? That is that is childish actually. So that can be a point with respect to Raymond Lay. And anybody, there is at least 5 people who said the appointments are right. I want to hear from them as well.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Just one thing, sir. Does the Oracle part really come into significance here, given that it was 10 years before that Raylene had left Oracle as early as 2000?
Right. Yeah, that's fine. But basically, they were bringing in, what he did, what was he doing, why did he bring them in? If you look into the profile that is given to him, he was earlier the managing partner at KPCB, right? Other than that, the most important thing, his experience in IT industry is from Oracle, right? So that is what the concern is. Okay, anybody who support the appointments?
Yes, sir.
Tanay.
Yeah, sir. So my point that it was noted. It was told that his record was not too good. But if we see where it was not too good, why the customers were not satisfied, or the employees were not satisfied, was that he had cut costs and attempted to raise the prices. So no one likes when the prices are raised, or when the employees salary, anything of cost cutting is being done at the company. So that is kind of a normal reaction of any kind of a stakeholder. So that does not take away all the abilities which he has. And there is a reason why he was appointed as a CEO at SAP as well. So he has the competence to act as the CEO. Although there were some issues which some of the decisions which the stakeholders didn't like, but that doesn't take anything from him. And yes, I basically I didn't the point of retaliation was something which I didn't take into consideration, which you mentioned. So that is
fine.
something.
Okay, Shivani.
Sir, I have a small doubt. So,
Please.
in case if people from top management are terminated, or if they are living there for their own interest, how are we expecting that they are going to protect the previous company's trade secrets or whatever confidential matters? Like, what motive do they have to protect that?
See, there are multiple ways to handle it. One is that you can prevent them from joining a rival company immediately, right, in the next 3 years or so. But it is in practice, it's very difficult to practice, very difficult to implement, right? They may join a company. For example, we talked about Thermax yesterday. Thermax itself had a serious issue. There is a relatively small water treatment chemical research company in USA. I just forget the name. I couldn't recollect it immediately. They hired some 4-5 people from the top position, from the R&D top position from that company. And within 2-3 months, Thermax was able to come out with a product which is essentially a competitor to the company, from where these people have come up from. Right. So then that particular company filed a case against Thermax in USA, And later, Thermax was forced to settle it out of court. They said that we will give you a royalty for each and every product that we sell using that technology. So that is how Thermax settled. It essentially means that Thermax did violate, the ethical norms. Those people who came from that company did bring in the technological input, which was used by Thermax to launch the product. So it is very difficult to prove, but in this case they were able to prove because already the other company has got patent rights for some of the technologies, and Thermax did it, and hence with that they could play the case. But that is why Thermax was forced to settle the case out of the court.
Sir, another thing, like in the case, it was written that Apotheker's contract was not getting renewed because of his performance or the
At
customer
SAP, yeah.
distress at
Yeah.
SAP. So, sir, what is this contract thing in the top management level?
No. Generally, when the top managerial personnel are appointed, they are appointed on a contract basis only. So initially, it depends. It varies from company to company, and they would give an appointment for 3 years or 2 years, depending upon the board of the directors. So, and it would get extended, right? So that is how it is. In fact, if you look in Vishal Shikha was also initially appointed for 3 years, and so that is how the CEOs are appointed. They are typically appointed on a contract basis. So if you do not renew the contract at the end of the contract period, you don't need to pay any severance package. That is the advantage. So the companies go for this arrangement so that if they find the person not competent enough to lead the company, they may choose not to renew the contract, thereby avoid paying a severance package. Okay. Well, now we have the coming back to our discussion. We have the advantage of having the hindsight advantage that Apotheker proved to be ineffective, and he took absurd measures, by selling I'm going to sell PC division or shutting down PC division. These kind of absurd measures have been initiatives have been taken by Apotheker, and within 10 months, Apotheker was fired by HP. Very next year in 2011, Apotheker was fired by the company. He could not even complete 1 year in the company. And then what happened next? Briefly.
Whitman was appointed as CEO in the place of Apotheker.
Yeah, Meg Whitman was appointed as a CEO, and then what happened? And then what happened?
So I think a robust succession plan was brought in place where they focus more on internal employees. I think
you are missing one important thing, a major thing, in fact.
So probably they also looked at not going for expensive acquisitions, which the previous CEOs had.
They did a major measure in 2015. What did they do? They split the company into two. HP is no more the HP that was there in. 1 second. There is some. Hello. Yes, I am in a class. Right. HP was split into two companies. Original the HP, which retained the hardware business, was renamed as HP Incorporated, and the software services division was separated into Hewlett Packard Enterprises, or HPE. Right. Meg Whitman retained the leadership position of both the company. In one company as a chairman, executive chairman, and another company as a CEO. She retained that position for 2 years to ensure smooth transition, and then she quit both the companies, or retired from both the companies. So both of them are reasonably doing well. Hewlett Packard Enterprises and HP Incorporated. HP Incorporated continues to deal with the hardware division, that is like printers and computers, PCs and printers. and HP and or Hewlett Packard Enterprises. Hewlett Packard is there is no hyphen in between. Now, Hewlett Packard Enterprises focusing on software services. So there are now 2 HPs, right? So that's what happened in HP. And she did it, Nick Widman did it seamlessly. Like they were lucky to get Nick Widman, who could bring the company back on track and then, provide the right direction. So that is about the case. The most important thing is, as we pointed out in between, the most important thing is if we do not plan the succession properly, every stakeholder suffers, but the stakeholder who suffer the most are the shareholders. The continued shareholder value creation is very, very important when you're talking about a listed company with public shareholders. So with this, we will conclude that case. I'm supposed to discuss the case of WorldCom, but before that, I got mails from 1 or 2 people that whatever concept that we discuss in the class so far, are they really practical? Do they really work? For example, stewardship theory, or so. In order to highlight the issue that these things are actually practical, what I'm going to do now is to take up India's leading business group, Tatas, and explain each of the concepts. Right? Whatever we covered so far, starting from stewardship theory, stakeholder value creation, and the stewardship theory, then agency theory, and then the internal control system, right? So I'll try to bring in or highlight those concepts by focusing on Tata Group, right? Initially, we will start with the history of Tata Group. We are not going to spend much time on the history of Tata Group because that's not what is important for us at this juncture, right? But history is something which is very, very important to lay the foundation. So we'll start with the history of Tata Group, and then we will go on. So in the first 15 minutes or the next 10-12 minutes before the break, I'll provide the history of Tata Group, and then we will explain all these concepts as it happened in the case of Tatas. So that will make it very clear to you that whatever we discuss are practical things and not just concepts. Okay. So the concepts can be applied. So that is the beauty of it. And of course, if time permits, we will discuss the case of WorldCom as well. Okay. And also, I have seen, I have my iPad as well, so I am looking into the group chat also. So those who have mentioned their ideas, in the group chat also, that will be certainly considered for class participation. Okay, we are going to discuss about the corporate governance issues in Tata Group. So Tata Group was founded in 1868 when then 29-year-old Jamshedji Tata floated a cotton trading firm. His father was a rich Parsi businessman, and Jamshedji Tata was working with the bank as a at some position, some junior level position, probably a clerk, and then he got some money. And see, it is at that point in time, everybody in every businessman, what the name, were getting into cotton trading. It is because till 1850, the major supplier of cotton to the textile mills in United Kingdom were from United States. But in 1960s, US got into a civil war, and hence the cotton supply from US got disrupted in a big way. So the next major supplier for cotton was India, and hence the cotton prices skyrocketed due to the supply issues from United States. And there were also legends that people actually tore their old cotton mattresses and took that cotton and they started selling it, because that was fetching a lot of money. So there is a big demand for cotton and also shortage. And everybody got into cotton trading. Every businessman what they name got into cotton trading, and that was giving good return. So that is why Jamshedji Tata also got into cotton trading. And the very next year, he took the next step. He established, rather he bought a oil mill, bankrupt oil mill at a dead cheap price, and converted that into a textile mill, which was called Alexandra Mill. But it didn't do well because he bought the second-hand equipment, and it was not doing well. But what he learned was the tricks of the game of cotton manufacturing, textile. So with that experience, he collected, he raised more capital and established another mill in Nagpur. He named it as Empress Mill, because it is at that point in time, Empress Victoria has taken over the British Empire. So he named it as Empress Mill. And in 1877, it started the operation. And in 1880, initially he was joined by his nephew R.D. Tata, and later his own sons, Ratan Tata and Dorabji Tata also joined. These two photographs show both all the four people. So they were all partners in their business. And in 1904, Jamshedji Tata passed away, and his elder son Dorabji Tata took over as the chairman of Tata Sons. So basically, Dorabji Tata and Ratanji Tata had 40% stake in Tata Sons. By this time they had a holding company. After R.D. Tata merged his holding company into Tata Sons, it became a single entity. So Dorabji Tata and Ratan Tata had 40% stake each, and R.D. Tata had 20% stake. And R.D. Tata was playing a crucial role because he was the eldest after the death of Jamshedji Tata. And they started Tata Steel in 1907. They set up Indian Institute of Science in 1911. And in 1918, Ratan Tata, the second son of Jamshedji Tata, passed away. He was very young, 47, and he didn't have any children. In fact, even Dorabji Tata also didn't have any children. So Ratan Tata's wife adopted, after the death of her husband, he adopted Naval Tata, a poor boy, from the relatives only. She adopted Naval Tata. Naval Shinji Tata was adopted by her. And in 1925, Tata Group got into heavy losses, and one F.E. Dinsha, another Parsi businessman, he lent 2 crore to Tata Group, with which Tata Group was able to save its face. In fact, it was able to survive because of that money. And in return, Dinsha was promised 25% of the money that Tata Sons made from Tata Steel, and 12.5% from Tata Hydro, hydroelectric power. But yeah, we will see what happened to that bit later. Meanwhile, in 1926, R.D. Tata passed away, and his elder son, J.R.D. Tata, took the family stake. And in fact, R.D. Tata gave the entire stake, 20% stake, in the name of J.R.D. Tata only. But J.R.D. Tata is, he could have kept everything with him, but he was a gentleman, and he divided the 20% stake among his siblings equally, right? And but later, at the fag end of the Dorabji Tata's tenure, Dorabji Tata fell out with R.D. Tata, and he even fell out with young J.R.D. Tata. So Dorabji Tata forced J.R.D. Tata to reduce his side stake in the company from 20% to 6.5% stake in lieu of the loans that R.D. Tata has taken. R.D. Tata has taken a lot of loan, personal loan, and but he couldn't. J.R.D. Tata couldn't pay, so Dorabji Tata forced J.R.D. Tata to reduce, in lieu of the loan, reduce his family stake from 20% to 6.5% at Tata Sons. And meanwhile, in 1930, Tata Sons also could not repay Dinsha, and hence his loan was converted into equity, which was worth some 12.5 at Tata Sons. And in 1932, during the fag, the rumor was that during the fag end of his life, Dorabji Tata actually, lost his ability to take right business decisions, and he was really angry with for whatever reason, J.R.D. Tata, and hence after his death, he wanted Nauroji Chakletwala to become the chairman, and so in 1932, Dorabji Tata died, and Nauroji Chakletwala took over as the chairman of the business entity, and Nauroji Chakletwala is also a relative of Tata's, right? But he was very bold. So in order to help him, Nauroji Tata appointed the young J.R.D. Tata to be his executive assistant. And so this is the family tree of Tata family. Just have a look at it. Okay, so in 1938, after Chakletwala, Nauroji Chakletwala passed away, the very obvious choice was J.R.D. Tata, because J.R.D. Tata was assisting Chakletwala for nearly 5 years. Practically, he was running the group. So he automatically became the choice of the board of Tata Sons to succeed Nauroji Chakletwala. So he, at a very young age of 34, became the chairman of Tata Group and Tata Sons. And when he took over, the assets of Tata Sons, where Tata Group was 62 crores in 1939. And when he retired, or when he gave up the mantle, it was worth 13,000 crores. That is the growth that the company achieved under his chairmanship. Okay. Yeah. Meanwhile, he also converted during this period the shareholding of Tata family, including that of Tata Sons and including that of Dorabji Tata and Ratanji Tata and R.D. Tata. Everything was converted, parked with a charitable trust. Sir the Ratanji Tata Trust and Sir Dorabji Tata Trust. And yeah, and how did these two people, the Shapoorji Pallonji family got their stake in Tata Sons? This Dinsha, after the death of Dinsha's family sold Dinsha's stake in Tata Sons to Shapoorji Pallonji. So that is when they first got their shareholding. Later, J.R.D. Tata's, younger brother, I guess Dharav Tata, he fell out with his brother J.R.D. Tata, and in the anger, he sold his stake in Tata Sons. Remember, he got some stake in Tata Sons. That stake was also sold to Shapoorji Pallonji family. So that is how Shapoorji Pallonji family ended up getting around 18% stake in Tata Sons. Okay, so what we are going to do is we will stop here. With this, we are ending the history. And in the next, once we come back from the break, we will talk about how stewardship theory and agency theory and other theories are applied or happen in the context of Tata Sons, right? So that Tata Group rather. So that is what we will do. So we are taking a break now. We will meet after 15 minutes.